Which choice best describes data from the graph that support the researcher's conclusion? Alessandro Ney et al. Presented study participants with vignettes about fictive political candidates, portraying them as embodying a personality trait widely considered admirable, agreeableness, or one considered ignoble, cynicism. A survey recorded participant ratings of the candidates' likability and showed that across participants, ignoble trait candidates were less likable than admirable trait candidates. However, when the researchers factored in participants' own personality trait scores on a scale of 1, least ignoble, to 7, most ignoble, they concluded that this relative ranking of candidates persisted except among the participants with high ignobility scores. So the text highlights how there's a study, and in this study there were vignettes about fictive political candidates, and they had different personality traits, like admirable traits like agreeableness, and ignoble traits like cynicism. And so the participants were asked to rate these candidates' likability, and they showed that across participants, ignoble trait candidates were less likable than admirable trait candidates, but that when the researchers factored in the participants' own personality trait scores, so what the participants considered of themselves on a scale of 1 to 7, they concluded that this relative ranking of candidates persisted except among participants with high ignobility scores. So those with high ignobility scores didn't follow the same general trend of other people. Therefore, with this information, let's look at the answer choices. A. There was a strong positive correlation between the participants' ignobility scores and admirable trait candidates' likability ratings, but there was no correlation between ignobility scores and ignoble trait candidates' likability ratings. So looking at this graph, we can see that it's about the participants' likability ratings for candidates by candidates' traits and participants' ignobility trait scores. So looking at this graph, we can clearly see that for the ignoble trait candidates, the candidate likability is definitely lower for the ignoble trait score participants when they're lower. So whenever these are low, like 1 through 5, the candidate likability is less than the admirable trait candidates. The admirable trait candidates had a flat candidate likability throughout the ignoble trait scores of participants. But here we can see the claim made by the researchers, which is that the participants with high ignobility scores did not follow the same pattern of liking the admirable trait candidates and disliking the ignoble trait candidates when they had a high ignobility score. This is seen here, where the participants with 7 or above 6 liked the ignoble trait candidates more than the admirable trait candidates. So, if looking at answer choice A again, we can see that it's wrong because there is no strong positive correlation between ignobility scores and admirable trait candidates' likability rankings, meaning that the ignobility trait score influences the admirable trait candidates, which is the triangle here. So we can clearly see that this triangle has a consistent straight line. Therefore, they don't have any relationship with the ignoble trait score participants, so the positive correlation mentioned here is incorrect. And we don't have to consider the second part to know that A is incorrect. So with this, we can eliminate option choice A. B. Participants with an ignobility score of 5 or less rated admirable trait candidates as more likable than ignoble trait candidates, whereas participants with an ignobility score of 6 or more rated ignoble trait candidates as equally likable or even more likable than admirable trait candidates. So looking at this, we can clearly see that this seems to be the correct answer, because it highlights proper information from the graph that supports the claim made in the text, which is that participants with high ignobility score did not follow the same general trend of liking the admirable trait candidates and disliking the ignoble trait candidates. So we can clearly see here that because the participants with a high ignobility score of 6, 5 or more, or 6 or more here, it says here that the 6 or more ignobility score participants like the ignoble trait candidates equally or more than the admirable trait candidates. This is true because looking at 6 here, we can clearly see that the the rating comparing the admirable to the ignoble is about equal, and afterwards it's greater than for the ignoble rather than the admirable. And then we can clearly see that from 1 to 5, they were rated lesser. So now with this, we can clearly see that B seems to be the correct answer. But let's check the other answers. C. Overall, participants rated admirable trait candidates as quite likable, and that rating was not significantly affected by the participants' ignobility scores. This is incorrect because although this is correct information from the graph, this doesn't support any claim, the claim made in the text. So because this doesn't support the claim, we can clearly eliminate option choice C. D. Unlike participants with an ignobility score of 6, participants with an ignobility score either greater or less than 6 give admirable trait candidates and ignoble trait candidates different likability ratings. So this is incorrect because although this is technically true, this doesn't clearly prove the claim here, and because this doesn't properly prove that claim, we can eliminate option choice D. And with that, we know that the correct answer is B.